Leia made a small wreath and held it out to the head of the family. The man did not like the fact that the girl dared to call him her father, whereupon he said it was utter nonsense and told the child to get out of the way. Leonora Estrella de Hachania is the only daughter of the Duke of Hachania. She is the illegitimate child of the imperial family. The girl wanted very much to be loved, but in the end, everyone turned their backs on her because of her origins. Leonora grew up as Duke Hachania's favorite daughter from the beginning. But one day, news came that her mother had gone missing while traveling. But the oracle appeared, saying that Leonora was the illegitimate child of the imperial family. Duke Hachania, because of his wife's betrayal, turned his back on his daughter and began to neglect her. At the age of 19, Leonora, who from a young age suffered from an incurable disease, eventually died. The life of the protagonist is the narrative of a minor character of a family of villains from the love fantasy novel she ended up in. Moreover, she was a minor character. What's worse is that she moved into the body of the villain family's daughter, Leonora Estrella de Hachania. The protagonist could not believe that all this should happen to the child in whose body she found herself. After all, she was abandoned by her father, and on top of that, she dies all alone from an incurable disease. The main character does not want to put up with this plot, so she decides that she will not go with the flow for anything. The girl decides that she will use any method to avoid this fate. For the sake of the minor characters and the villain father, who is only supposed to appear in the prologue, the protagonist is going to change them all and make the Hachania family prosper. A blonde-haired boy named Enoch asked Leonora to let him rest for just 5 minutes. But in response, the girl ordered Enoch to repeat that the Hachania never cry, and also told him to make 100 swings of a wooden sword. Leia watched her brothers and couldn't wait for the time when they were already grown up. The protagonist realized that there was still a long way to go. However, if she didn't, their family as secondary characters would simply be destroyed. About a year ago, it was after one incident that the protagonist realized that she was in the world of the novel. The butler kept looking for His Excellency to inform him that the lady's ship had capsized in the Straits of Arena. The little doll the girl was holding fell out for a second. His Highness ordered the butler to tell everything down to the smallest detail. The protagonist realized that it was definitely the first time she was in such a situation, but for some reason she felt that it was familiar to her. Leia called her dad, and the man, noticing the child's condition, immediately hugged her and asked her not to worry. Leia remembered that Noel was her mom's name. The girl touched her daddy's face and mentally wondered what his name was. The man took the gesture as if his daughter was comforting him now. Their conversation was interrupted by the butler informing His Excellency that it was the work of pirates from Saint-Tropez who were targeting Empress Inez. The man decided that there was no point in blaming anyone right now, whereupon he inquired if Empress Inez still had her youngest daughter. The moment the girl heard Inez's name, her thoughts that could not gather in any way instantly cleared up. Memories from her past life began to return. At the same second, the girl remembered that her father in this new world was called Gaspar. The man was glad that his daughter Leia finally learned to pronounce his name. The main character remembered everything. The girl remembered where she saw her daddy's name and what kind of place she now lived in. Gaspar Desiree de Hachania was the family that had been exterminated without blinking an eye in the novel she had read in her past life before she died. And even their last name was of minor significance. The girl didn't understand exactly why she had become a minor character. She managed to move into the body of a minor villain who appears only in the prologue. In her past life, the protagonist lived quietly and did what she was told. Her adoptive father, the head of national security, chose a path for her to follow. The girl followed in his footsteps and became a special agent, learning everything associated with it. She believed that someday her adoptive father would recognize her, that he would finally love her as his own daughter, and she would live a normal life in a normal family. But then her father betrayed her and she died alone. The girl realized that until now she had been living happily as the youngest daughter, sticking to her family, with no memory of her past life. So, also, according to her memories, Leonora, the youngest daughter of Duke Gaspar Hachania, would leave this mortal world at the age of 19 from illness. The man addressed the maid that it seemed his daughter was not well. They should take notice. Leia thought about the fact that at this rate, it wasn't just Gaspar and her, but the entire Hachania family would be in for a horrible fatal ending. Leia wasn't going to live a life of longing for someone else's love like she had in her previous life. She wasn't going to be just a minor character that her father loves dearly. Now that the girl remembered everything, she decided that she wasn't going to let this romance plot develop. The girl had two goals. First, she wanted to survive herself, and then she wanted to make sure that the whole family survived. For the sake of this, she wanted to train her brothers. So she approached her brothers named Sylvie and Enoch, letting them know that she needed their help. Leia had given herself her word that she would not let the plot of the novel run its course. However, it had been 3 years since she had lived in the body of a child. During that time, she realized that she had been very naive, for it turned out not to be so easy to find a solution. Her brother noticed her sister's confusion and asked if she was in pain. Leia began to study the blonde-haired brother, who looked so innocent, as if an angel had descended from heaven. It was the third brother, named Enoch Gwendal de Hachania. The second brother also asked his sister if her stomach hurt. It was the second brother, Sylvester Adgard de Hachania. The boy had a charming appearance, in no way inferior to his brother. Leia realized, looking at the faces, that it was hard to deny that she had entered the world of the novel, for they were too beautiful. And if they were the main characters, they might have noticed that she was a fellow traveler. After all, to this day, she's not living the story from the novel, and if the story initially runs its course, Hachania's family will come to an end. Sylvester touched his sister's forehead and noticed that a fever seemed to be present. Leia noticed that they are both kind and calm, but to die just because they are minor characters is too cruel. Suddenly, Leia perked up and reminded her brothers that it was time for training. Enoch took his sister by the cheeks and told her to tell her to be sure in case she was sick, because then it would be hard to concentrate on training and for worrying about Leia. The girl assumed that they wanted to skip class, whereupon she asked her brother Enoch to take his hands off her. In response, Enoch kissed his little sister and asked her not to be sick and promised that they would be back soon. Leia felt strange after the return of her past life memories yesterday. She felt somehow unaccustomed and uncomfortable because no one had ever treated her like this before in her past life. Suddenly, Sylvester turned to his sister and noticed that since today she was acting stranger than usual and asked her what was wrong. But the girl only reminded him that time was running out and it would be time to start practicing. Mentally, she apologized to Sylvester for not being able to tell him anything yet. After the brothers left, the girl realized that meeting with them didn't help her much. Therefore, she decided that it was better to get down to business, namely to deal with the situation now. Leia grabbed a notebook that was on the table, but before she wrote anything, she thought that if she used Korean, it was unlikely that anyone would understand her. So she decided to start by writing her name, which sounded like Leonora Estrella de Hachania. The girl also wrote that she is the only daughter of the Hachania family and her age is 3 years old. She was also destined to die of an incurable disease at the age of 19. The father, named Gaspard Désiré de Hachania, is the Duke of the Villeneuve Empire and the Emperor's right-hand man. At this point, her mother and Duchess Noelle was the only female admiral of the empire. Immediately after giving birth, she set sail with her close friend the Empress, and 3 years later was kidnapped by pirates, going missing. The girl thought about it and realized that rumors had started spreading right after Noelle went missing. There was information that among the children of Hachania, there was one who had inherited the blood of the imperial family as well. The oracle had relayed these words to everyone. As a result, rumors spread that Noelle had conspired with a member of the imperial family and that the proof of this was the content on the scroll. Aside from the sadness of losing his wife, Gaspar was devastated to learn from the rumors that she had betrayed him. And Gaspar, who guessed that the illegitimate child was Leonora, gradually turned his back on her. Nevertheless, he soon refused to obey the imperial family, and the reason for his treason was Leonora's death. Because the only cure for this disease, a disease called Ruhr, was an elixir. But it went to the protagonist of the novel, named Inez, who suffers from the same disease. The death of his daughter, from whom he turned away, was the reason for the treason. But the girl decided that somehow it did not add up. Then she suggested that perhaps it was the character of Gaspar Hachania. After all, he is a pathetic minor character who never got to expel an illegitimate child, a stronghold of his wife's infidelity. He began to feel a piercing sense of guilt when Leonora, plagued by illness, eventually died. The original story didn't specify exactly which of the children was illegitimate, but it's still her, since her 3 brothers look a lot like Gaspar. Once this rumor spreads, her affectionate father, and behind him, everyone holding on to who they are, will disown her with the blink of an eye. And if things are left as they are, she'll die early in this life. So Leia decides that she must somehow be the first to get the elixir. However, the girl needs to cross an endless desert, and beyond that, the great ocean. And the only person who can get the one-of-a-kind elixir is not the protagonist or even His Highness the Emperor. It was her first brother, whose face she had never seen. It was a young man named Zachary. Leia's first brother gave the elixir to Inez, not her sister, because Zachary was the second main male character in the original. And it seems that for him, seeing his beloved Inez suffer, is completely incomparable to his dying little sister. As always, the main male character is usually a fool who sees nothing but love. The girl realized that everything would be easier if Zachary gave the elixir to her, but the likelihood of him doing so was absolutely zero. Leia thought about the fact that after she remembered her past life, the headache only got worse, as if her body became heavy. Suddenly, a ducal maid named Lulu entered the room. She turned to the young mistress to remind her that it was time for a snack. Another duchy maid named Lala was also with her. The duchy maid asked the young mistress what she was so busy doing that she didn't even hear the knock. Leia understood why they decided to invade now, after which one of the maids took the notebook in which Leia had recently made notes. The girl tried to prevent it somehow, because it was impossible for the maid to realize that they were letters. But in the end, the maid said that the young mistress should learn because she only scribbles. That said, even the young mistress's scribbles look really cute. At this second, Leia was very thankful that she is a child, because whatever she does, everything is seen as a childish act. One of the maids placed a plate of cookies and a glass of milk on the table and wished the young mistress a pleasant appetite. Lulu reported that Roberty the cook said he couldn't make her favorite juice because the ingredients for it were missing. The maid asked the young mistress to bear with her today sometime, and she would be sure to bring it tomorrow. Suddenly, the maids noticed that the girl was upset and assumed it was because she couldn't drink her favorite juice. But that wasn't what Leia was upset about. She would want to eat while she had the chance, because once the rumors spread that she was the illegitimate child of a member of the imperial family, everyone in this manor would turn their backs on her. It was pouring rain outside the window, and Leia, looking out the window, reflected on the fact that before, when it rained like this, her father had always stayed and been by her side. But today, he didn't come. Leia set herself to thinking that perhaps it was even better that way, because somewhere now he must find out that she was a complete copy of the wife who had betrayed him, and find out that she is in fact a bastard child. Leia thought that she must be going crazy, for she was already frightened by the very thought that her father was simply absent. The girl assumed that it seemed that since her body had become a child's, her consciousness had begun to adjust to it. Compared to the loneliness in her past life, the time she spent with her father was only a moment, but she already missed his warmth. Leia realized that just about now, rumors were spreading throughout the manor, and even Lulu and Lala would no longer take her side. Leia realized that she had become weak, and if this continued, she would not survive in this world. But the girl decided to push those thoughts away from her by patting her cheeks with her palms. Leia set herself to pull herself together and focus on what she had to do now, which was to get the elixir by any means necessary. However, what was the girl's surprise when she saw Lulu and Lala in front of her in the morning? The maids could not admire the young mistress because she even after sleep is very cute. Leia did not understand what these girls were doing here. The girl assumed that they had not yet heard the rumors, as suddenly 3 men entered the room to the young mistress. The maid immediately tried to block their way. After all, they cannot just enter the room of the young duchess. The men looked at each other and began to collect the girl's things. The maid was worried and asked the knights why they were doing all this. But the answer she got was that the Duke had ordered the young lady's room to be moved to a separate manor. Leia understood that it was because she was no longer part of the family. The maids immediately assumed it was because of those rumors. Leia realized that just as she thought, Lulu and Lala already knew about everything. The knight explained to the maids that since they were in this manner, they could no longer serve the girl, and told them to leave. Leia looked at the sad faces of the maids and realized that she was ready for this. Leia packed her things, ready to move to a separate manor. One of the knights asked the young duchess to be careful because it had rained, so the ground was slippery. One of the knights noticed that the girl was having a hard time walking, so he offered to stop for a while, as she was just a child. After that, he suggested that someone take her in his arms. But the other knight didn't even want to hear it, and he didn't understand what was good in her to take her in his arms, and it's not even worth it, because she is the illegitimate child of the woman who betrayed their duke. The man asked his partner to watch his words, for there was no direct evidence that it was about the young lady Leonora, for she had been sectioned off until a decision was made. Leia, listening to this conversation, realized that these jerks were not watching their words in front of the child at all. If they had been her subordinates in a past life, she wouldn't have let it go that easily. As they approached the separate building, the girl couldn't be happy that they had finally made it, for her legs were hurting very badly, and sometimes even thoughts slipped in that she was going to die. Leia hadn't expected it would be so hard to survive in a child's body. One of the knights informed Mistress Nora that they had moved her things and it was time for them to return. Leia looked up at the woman and realized it was Teacher Nora standing in front of her. The woman greeted the young mistress, but at the same second informed her that it was not yet known if she could continue to be called by that name. The part of the mansion that hadn't been cared for in a long time, unlike the main building, didn't look too luxurious, and even the servants don't show their noses here. Leia noticed that once she was here, she was directly starting to realize that she was now trash. In any case, the time spent in the annex would not be long, for the Emperor would soon decide that she was the child among the Hachania family, and would soon summon her for fear of spreading rumors that the imperial family's lineage was tainted. The woman walked so fast that the girl couldn't even keep up with her stride being more like a sprint. Teacher Nora was infuriated by this, and she asked the young mistress to move faster. After all, she is actually very busy, and the other one is just idly existing. Leia tried to digest the words said by the woman, but decided that she should be patient. The servants of Duke Hachania, very loyal to Gaspar, may not like that she is a bastard child, and yet this woman's feelings for Gaspar are hardly mere loyalty. The woman led the girl to one of the doors and informed her that she would now be using this room. Leia took a look and saw that the room was a complete mess, and from the fact that no one visited the manor, it was all covered with cobwebs. Teacher Nora had warned the young mistress that if there was anything unclear, she should ask her now. The girl decided to remember the words about so-and-so celebrating, and wondered if the words were really about her. The woman explained that of course she was speaking of the Duke's dead wife, for she had been a petty and unfaithful woman, and the result of that foul deed was a young lady. Leia didn't understand why all the servants in this family were like this. After all, how dare she say such things to a child? Teacher Nora was insulted to the core that this unfaithful woman dared to betray their beloved head. The woman decided that even if the boat capsized, it was her punishment. Teacher Nora thought that if it were her, she would always be there to keep their duke safe. Leia thought about the fact that her mom, whose face she didn't even remember, was now being insulted. The girl didn't understand why the hell she had to put up with this, so turned to the teacher Nora and said that it was time for her to wake up from sleep, and no matter what happened, she was in any case indifferent to Gaspar. The woman was angered by these words, and she emphasized once again that the young lady was not the Duke's child, for she had dirty blood flowing in her. Suddenly, the knights who were walking back to the manor heard a shrill sound. The men decided that it seemed to be coming from inside the house. At this time, Leia had already grabbed the teacher's head, intending to pull out all of her hair. The woman didn't understand where the child got so much strength from, but as soon as the teacher was able to break free, she immediately swung her hand at the young lady. The woman didn't realize which child in such a situation wouldn't even blink an eye, because the girl was left just standing there. At this second, 3 knights rushed into the manor. The teacher immediately began to clean herself up and assured that nothing had happened, explaining that Mrs. Leonora was simply not yet accustomed to the new conditions. Leia noticed that the woman had pulled herself together and decided that she was obviously not stupid. The girl understood when her family and servants openly expressed opinions, but she wouldn't put up with being looked down upon by those like her. Leia made a completely innocent appearance and touched one of the knights with her small hand, explaining that she was very hungry. This was her tactic, just acting like a poor child. In reality, however, she was really hungry, for she had expended a lot of energy. The knights immediately looked in the teacher's direction, and absolute condemnation was read on their faces. Leia felt ridiculous that a grown woman felt inferior because of a 3-year-old child. Still, she realized that there were such people everywhere. Leia remembered the power she felt during the fight and assumed that there was some sort of mana in Leonora's body. The girl's eyes immediately lit up, because with that, they could find a way to live with it sometime when things settled down. Leia speculated that maybe she could learn how to control mana using the plot of the novel, so she decided that she would have to try different ways. Suddenly, the girl turned around as she heard some rustling. Leia wondered who could be there, since there should be no one else who comes to her. In the girl's head crept the thought that the teacher Nora decided to take revenge on her. But what was the girl's surprise when she saw Roberti's cook enter the room? The man immediately greeted the young mistress. A small pouch also appeared in his hands. The man was touched that the young lady had memorized the name of such a lowly man like him. Leia inquired as to what he was doing here, whereupon the cook revealed that he had brought the young mistress some juice. After all, he had heard that she was quite upset yesterday about not getting her favorite drink. This bothered the cook, so he decided to make it for the young lady. Leia couldn't believe that Chef Roberti had come here for that, after which she thanked the man for such an act. Suddenly, Sylvester appeared from nowhere, after which he asked the cook what he had just given Leonora. The girl was completely shocked, as she did not expect to see one of her brothers here. The young gentleman once more repeated his question as to what the cook had just given his sister Leonora. Sylvester assumed that the cook had come because he had heard rumors. Leia, watching Chef Roberti falter in front of the young gentleman, mentally supported him, for he should not be frightened of a child. The cook explained that he wanted to give the young mistress some juice. In response, Sylvester asked why and on whose orders he had done so. But the cook did not answer this question in any way. Sylvester wanted to make sure that Roberti had gotten permission for this action from the Duke. The cook explained that he had no authorization. Leia felt sorry for the cook, and she glanced unkindly in Sylvester's direction. The girl assumed that he had nothing better to do since he had come all the way here to argue. Leia decided that Sylvester just didn't like the cook taking care of a child out of wedlock, whereupon she admitted to herself that she wouldn't drink it and handed the bottle back to the cook. Suddenly, the bottle fell out of her small hands and shattered. Leia herself did not notice how she managed to hurt herself on one of the shards. Sylvester took his sister in his arms and told Roberti, the cook, to get the doctor right away. Sylvester turned to his sister Leia, asking if she was in pain. Leia couldn't understand why her brother was so worried about a small scratch, even though he himself had just tried to take away the juice. Leia looked at Sylvester and noticed that she didn't understand what he was thinking at all. After all, it was expected that he had come because he wanted to say something. Sylvester didn't have the friendly nature that Enoch had, so he was clumsy in expressing his feelings. But she felt that he cared for her because she was his little sister. But that was no longer the case. Sylvester kept up with his sister and wanted to see how badly her wound hurt. He even offered to examine her if she didn't mind. In response, the girl only pushed her brother away and told him to leave. Sylvester didn't expect such a reaction from his little sister at all. Leia decided that it was necessary to stop expressing feelings because it would be better for their future. Leia reiterated once more and ordered Sylvester to get out of here. In response, Sylvester asked Leia if she really wanted him to leave, to which he received an affirmative answer. Leia didn't really want to repeat the mistakes of her past life, but decided that it was too late, as she was just trying to put her feelings aside at least for now. The girl suggested that perhaps all of this was just a dream in which she wished she had a family of her own. Sylvester called her sister Leia. She asked not to be called that again, all because Sylvester was no longer her brother. And Leia had said so openly. These words hit Sylvester very hard. At that very second, Leia felt a terrible cold. The girl assumed that her brother was using Manu. Leia realized that this was a much colder sensation than was described in the book, and if it continued like this, it would be dangerous. The girl felt the coldness gripping her down to her fingertips. Suddenly, a doctor and a maid entered the room. The man hurriedly asked the young gentleman what he was doing. The maid was also very worried and wanted to make sure the young mistress was all right. In response, Sylvester told the maid Lulu to stay back, for he needed to hear an answer from his sister Leonora. The girl realized that her brother seemed to be out of control because of what she had said. Mentally, Leia prayed for someone to help her. Sylvester insisted that his sister give some sort of answer. The girl admitted that she was very cold. Sylvester realized that he himself hadn't noticed that he was using Manu. Leia, at this time because of the cold, was already dizzy, after which the girl began to lose consciousness. Mentally, Leia turned to Sylvester, threatening that she would deal with him later and be sure to tell her father everything. But suddenly the girl was caught by the thought that she no longer had a daddy, and then her consciousness fell into the void. Leia woke up wondering where she was. Next to her, the girl noticed her daddy, who was glad that his daughter had finally come to her senses. Leia didn't understand what her daddy was doing in the outhouse. She couldn't believe that he had really come here for the sake of taking it easy on her. Her father looked around the girl's room, noticed his son Sylvester hiding behind the curtains, told his son that he could see him perfectly well from there. Leia did not expect to see her brother here. She immediately wondered how long he had been standing there. The father turned to Sylvester and asked if you had something to say to your sister Leonora. But there was only silence in reply. Still, Sylvester explained that strange rumors had reached him in the morning, so he had come to the annex, but for some reason he was very upset that his sister Leia was doing well without them. After which he apologized to his sister. Leia wasn't going to accept the fact that everything should magically become fine after apologizing. After which, she told Sylvester that she didn't want to talk to him anymore. Her father entered the conversation and explained to his daughter that Sylvester was wrong for using Manu, but her brother had apologized, and so it was wrong to ignore the apology. Leia couldn't believe that her father was now taking the side of someone who hadn't even properly apologized, while knowing that she was not his sister. The girl wondered if coming to the annex was supposed to be some sort of sympathy. The father looked at his daughter, and then Leia recognized that Sylvester had not attacked her, and accepts the fact that even experienced people have difficulty controlling mana. In response, Sylvester told his sister that he was going to forgive her. Afterward, he thanked his sister for forgiving him. Leia noticed that her brother was very much relieved to know that she had forgiven him. This made the girl realize that Hachania's family was very mild-mannered. The next day, Leia forgave Sylvester and let him go. In this world, special knights who could handle mana are called soul knights. There were also attributes that represented the 4 seasons of mana, and even handling the aura of one season required great talent. Among them, Sylvester was a winter knight born with the mana attribute of winter. It was also known that even a brief exposure to the mana of a winter knight, which could easily be used to freeze both earth and humans, should have been too much for Leonora's weak body. The maid turned to the young mistress to inquire if she should bring anything. Leia did not expect to see her maid Lula here at all, whereupon she inquired if she was allowed to be here. The maid explained that the master had given her his permission and asked the young mistress not to worry about it right now. The maid stroked the girl's head, assuring her that since she had taken the medicine, she would soon be able to sleep. But Leia's thoughts were occupied with wondering what her father was up to. The girl speculated that he probably just mellowed out for a while towards her, because her daddy is very soft in character. Leia also suggested the option that her dad still thinks of her as family. The girl decided that she shouldn't be so deluded anymore. After a while, Leia woke up to Enoch trying to wake her up. The boy, as he saw that he had succeeded, became very happy. Then he asked his sister if she knew that she had slept for 2 days. Leia hadn't expected Enoch to be here, so she asked him if it was a bad time for training. Her brother explained to his sis that he thought he couldn't concentrate on training, so he came here. Enoch admitted that he was very worried about Leia. The girl realized that it didn't mean skipping training at all. After all, he wouldn't even be her brother anymore, so he was just wasting his time. All of a sudden, Enoch remembered when his little sister was just a baby and couldn't even talk yet. She used to follow him around all day for him to hug her. The girl pretended that she didn't remember such a thing at all. Enoch was completely shocked when he found out that his little sister had told Sylvester that he was no longer her brother. Afterward, he asked her why she said that. Leia realized that she did it to get rid of her feelings, but she couldn't say it directly. So Leia reiterated once again that Sylvester was not her brother. Enoch wondered why his little sister thought so, after which he asked her who he was then. For a second, the girl thought about the fact that Enoch might react just like Sylvester, and she wasn't even fully healed yet. So she said that Enoch was still her brother. This news made the boy very happy, after which he decided that he could go to training with peace of mind. Leia immediately remembered that in the beginning, her brother had said that he couldn't start practicing because he was worried about her. After her brother left her room, the girl thought about the fact that Enoch was a minor character, and she only remembered that he and Gaspar had been killed by the Emperor. It seemed to the girl that he seemed to have some other role, but then she realized that nothing came to mind. Leia would be very grateful if she had more information from the original. The girl was sad about the fact that she didn't get any buff to the body of a minor character. All the girl had to do was raise her hand as some sort of magical glow erupted. That same bright beam ended up hitting the girl herself. Suddenly, Leia noticed that a book appeared near her. The girl was very excited to find out that in front of her lay the text of the original. Leia was very grateful that her prayer had been answered, so she decided that now she had to check everything out. The girl was reading a book that said that the baby sent by the pirates of Saint-Tropez with the head of Empress Inez cried. Leia could see that the original really lay before her. Here she remembered that earlier she had been curious about the contents of the novel, and then this book fell. The girl assumed that the heavens were helping her to get what she wanted. After that, she began to wish for a mountain of treasure, immortality, and level up alone, but realized that none of these seemed to work. Emperor Gregor then said that they should imprison the princess in the palace, and those who oppose it would be executed by beheading. Leia couldn't believe he was really that crazy. It was understandable, though. She had a tyrannical upbringing. The emperor tried to ease the pain of his bereavement by turning his back on his wife, who had gone traveling without telling him she was pregnant. But he never could, because his wife came back dead in a crate with a baby. Only the girl wanted to flip over to see the continuation, but noticed that the sheets further on were completely blank. Suddenly, she looked closer and noticed that the letters themselves were gradually beginning to add to the page. The text told her that Inez didn't even know the face of her father Gregor. She had been sent to an old estate where no one came to see her. However, around the age of 2, Inez realized that she had been reborn. Inez was overjoyed and thought about the fact that Leonora should come here as soon as possible to live a comfortable childhood. With such a weak body, she needs to absorb a huge amount of Leonora's mana. The girl realized that around this time, the oracle should appear, and everything in the duchy should return from Leonora, because she had a hand in spreading the rumors. The girl promised herself that she would no longer be hurt the way she had been. Inez had summoned her mana vault as soon as possible. Leia, who was reading this, was in complete shock. The realization came to the girl that the main character, Inez, was a reborn. Leia realized that she did not remember previously reading about this. Leia realized that the content of the book seemed to fill in as the story progressed, and only the description of the Empress's accident and the beginning of the novel was written as in the original. Eventually, the entire narrative was beginning to change for some reason. The girl realized that if she went to the Imperial Palace like this, she would not be able to fight back, whatever Inez did. Therefore, Leia decided that she should stay in the manor for now. The girl noticed that there was nothing useful to take with her here. This made her realize that her only option was to break through. The girl left her room, whereupon Henry informed her that the Lord was not in attendance at the moment. Leia wanted to wait for her daddy here, but the man insisted that the young lady could not stay in the corridor outside the study. The girl was angry, as Henry had never behaved like this before. Leia then turned to Henry and promised that she would give him 2 candies. The man did not really understand why young Lily wanted to give him a treat. The girl explained that it was because Henry worked very hard helping his daddy. In addition, Leia realized that the child cannot prepare as a bribe gold or wealth. Therefore, the only option left was to pretend to be nice and harmless. Henry accepted the treat from the young mistress and thanked her. Leia also specified that she would like Henry to give one of the candies to her daddy as well. Leia left Henry thinking that if she came tomorrow, she would be able to see Gaspar. But the next day, the situation was repeated, and Henry, as if by rote, reported that the gentleman was not in today. Eventually, it went on day after day. Leia was very angry, because no matter how you look at it, her father just avoided her. She tried to stay in the Duke's family by attacking Gaspar's weak heart, but she realized that if she cannot even meet him, there is no point. The girl realized that if this continued, things would become more complicated. As suddenly something caught the child's attention, Leia came to the conclusion that she was no longer his daughter, but resented him for changing. The girl assumed it was all because of the love she had received from him so far. Well, right now she just wanted to see her daddy smile. Leia made a beautiful wreath and decided to try once more to get into Gaspar's office. Already determined that this time she would be allowed into the study, the girl walked around the manor. Leia was confident in her action because Gaspar was a man who was happy even with such an insignificant gift. Leia realized that even sympathy would go a long way, for he had come to visit her when she was ill. Suddenly, the girl was taken out of her thoughts by her father, who met her on the way. She didn't see him ahead of her, so she bumped into him and fell. Leia excitedly called Gaspar her daddy, to which she was asked why she dared to call him that. The man turned to the child and informed her that she was in the way and told her to get out of the way. Leia realized that everything was fine, because her father was just angry because of Noelle's betrayal. Then the girl turned to the head of the family, saying that she wanted to give the wreath that she had made herself. The man took the wreath and began to look at it. Leia at this point tried to convince herself that there was nothing to worry about, because despite the fact that Gaspar has such a character. But in response, the man only threw the wreath on the floor and began to stomp it with his foot. Leia did not expect this to happen. Gaspar did not understand why she gave him this garbage. After that, he asked her not to do useless things anymore and to disappear from his sight. Leia realized that it didn't matter how much he felt betrayed by Noelle. Gaspar would never have said such words. The girl didn't want to put up with what she heard at all, whereupon she called out to Gaspar. The Duke did not like the way the girl called him at all. After that, Leia accelerated, and with all her might, hit him in the stomach. The man did not understand at all where such strength came from. After all, she is only a child. The girl jabbed her finger at the man and wondered if it was really her daddy. 3 years ago, the night before he ascended the throne, as soon as Gaspar woke up, he found himself in the body of Herzen. Suddenly, the man noticed the eldest daughter of the Marquis of Geron in front of him. The girl was very worried, after which she asked the man if he was all right. It was the Duchess of Hachania by the name of Noel Marianne de Hachania. The girl wanted to figure out what had happened to him all of a sudden like this. The man looked at the girl and realized she was wearing only a blanket out of her clothes. Gaspar assumed that the girl had used some kind of drug on him, after which he asked the girl to get dressed now. Noel at this point was already completely confused by what was happening. After he was in the body, he didn't even notice that it was someone else's body. Furthermore, he didn't realize what kind of girl was here, after which he decided that it was definitely some kind of trick by Marquis Geron. After all, the Marquis was the one who supported the Duke's ascension to the throne as an emperor, and now that his coronation is confirmed, he is trying to use his daughter to manipulate him. The man decided to break the silence and offered to clarify one thing. Gaspar warned the girl that if there was a child after what happened today, he would not accept that child as his own. Noelle stepped closer and looked into Gaspar's eyes. In that second, the man assumed she was trying to change his mind with her beauty. But Gaspar realized that it wouldn't work on him. Suddenly, something happened that Gaspar didn't expect at all. Noelle took it and punched him with all her might. Afterwards, the girl asked Gaspar who he was, because she didn't see her husband in front of her. From that day, he was imprisoned in the Duke's body, and it was only when the moon set that he was able to use the body and move at will. At that second, the man looked at the child and realized that she was a copy of her mother. Leia kept saying that it was not her daddy in front of her. Gaspar looked at her as if mesmerized to make sure that she was indeed a copy of Noelle. Gaspar told Leia that in fact he really was her father, and from what the oracle said, it looks like he had taken over Gaspar's body when his mother had Leia. At that time, his mana leaked into new life, and the bastard child of the imperial family was born. Leia tired to process the information Gaspar had said, after which she inquired what it all meant. Gaspar informed the girl that he didn't have time to waste on Leia anyway, so she could bugger off, because the time he could stay in this body was rather short. So the man must find out who put this curse on him and find his body. But Leia didn't let that happen, after which she grabbed the man by his robe. The girl didn't believe that he could be her real daddy. This only made the man angry, after which he snatched his robe from the girl's small hands. Gaspar decided that it looked like the little girl wanted to die. Gaspar informed the child that he still didn't like the fact that his mom had flowed over to her, so he decided to just absorb her back now. Suddenly, Leia felt a sensation as if all the strength was leaving her body and she would just pass out now. Suddenly, the consciousness of the real Gaspar manifested for a second, after which the man hurriedly told his daughter to run as far away as possible, whereupon he involuntarily pulled out a dagger and swung it at his daughter, but he ended up stabbing himself with it. Leia did not understand anything at all because she thought that her father had returned. The girl did not expect that her father had wounded himself. At this time, the butler was passing by and suddenly heard the voice of the young Duchess. At the same second, he ran to the sound and noticed a strange picture. The butler immediately asked the young mistress to move away from the lord, for it was very dangerous. Leia explained that it was impossible for Papa to stab himself. The butler heard, then grabbed the girl and at the same time knocked the blade out of the lord's hand. In the end, Gaspar still stabbed himself with the blade, after which a huge pool of blood formed. Rezka immediately began to ask the young Duchess if she was all right, but the girl was far more concerned about her father's condition. Leia ordered Henry to get a doctor right away. After all, her father was bleeding right now. The man promised he would be right back. Leia, looking after him, realized that on her face was written all the incomprehension of why she was worried about her dad in such a situation. The girl realized that it looked like Daddy was going to commit suicide over losing Noelle. Leia decided that if she could sense mana, she would think that too. After all, not only had her daddy changed in character, she could sense other people's mana despite her daddy being a Shadow Knight. The girl realized that in front of her was some kind of psycho in Gaspar's body, and since she's in Leonora's body, you can't say it's impossible. Leia snuggled closer to her papa, hoping that he would wake up soon. At this time, the maids were discussing among themselves that the head of the family still hadn't come to his senses. And no one could even think that the Duke would make such a radical decision. No one could not even guess what could have happened if there was no Duchess around. After the rumor spread that she was an illegitimate child, he turned his back on the young mistress. But the fact that such a kind child still lives in the annex is something amazing. At this time, Lee continued to study the book and noticed that the pages were still blank. She was very curious as to how things were now. The book is being written in real time, so there is nothing to be done about it. As long as Ines is a child, there will be no changes in the book. Leia noticed that strange events kept happening, so she decided that she should prepare for everything. The girl found it wonderful that Leonora has a lot of mana. After all, she could use it. The girl thought it would be just fine if Roman helped her. As far as she remembered, Inez was still a long way away from meeting the Archmage and learning magic. The girl realized that when they met, she would be in danger. So she decided that she should try to remember what she had read in her past life. Besides, there was magic in Leonora's body and she could use it. The girl wanted to learn how to use it as soon as possible, because there were already those who were targeting her mana. After a while, Leia decided to check on her dad's condition. The girl was walking along, thinking about the fact that Lala was now in the main building. Suddenly, Teacher Nora appeared, who had heard that the Lord was in such a state because of Leia. The girl didn't expect to meet her at all, causing her to freak out. The woman was out of anger and asked the child how she dared to hurt the master. Leia did not notice at all how she forgot about the teacher. The woman then grabbed the child's hand and began to shake it. Teacher Nora told the girl not to dare to harm the Lord anymore, because she too was feeling more and more what he was experiencing. Leia was shocked at those words and didn't understand what this woman could be feeling there since she wasn't even his spiritual twin. Leia noticed that she couldn't use her power like she used to. The girl assumed it was because that psycho tried to suck the mana out of her yesterday. Teacher Nora decided that there was nothing she could do about it and was going to punish the bad kid. After the childhood she had in her previous life, it made the girl laugh that the teacher wanted to scare her with a cane. The teacher's reaction, on the contrary, only made her more angry, whereupon she was about to grab the girl and teach her a good lesson. Suddenly, someone's hand fell on the woman's shoulder. It was Duke Gaspar, who asked the woman what she was going to do. The woman immediately changed in her face and was very glad that the gentleman was already awake. But the man was not in a good mood, whereupon he told the teacher to answer the question asked. The woman explained that she just wanted to give a lesson to the young lady in order for her to have good manners. Leia, who was watching the scene, was completely shocked when she saw that the one inside her father's body was using the aura on an ordinary person. The Duke was angry because the woman was trying to teach the child something she herself didn't learn at her age. The woman couldn't move due to the magic restraining her entire body. After that, at the snap of her fingers, she disappeared. Leia was completely shocked by what she saw and didn't understand what this psycho was doing. The girl asked why Daddy came here, to which she got the answer that Daddy came to see his daughter. He didn't understand why a reason was needed for that. Leia reminded the man that she had already told him several times that he wasn't her daddy, after which she inquired as to who he was. The man didn't expect the girl to understand, because this time he definitely hid his mana. Leia realized that no matter how much he hid, the aura around him gave him away. The girl then explained that Daddy doesn't treat even a servant in such a way that harms his children, for instead, he will give her the punishment she deserves. The spirit in Gaspar's body thought that was very foolish and naive. Leia couldn't disagree with it. Suddenly the girl was scared, thinking that he had come to kill her again. But Gaspar didn't understand what this child was carrying at all. Leia reminded the stranger that yesterday he sucked the mana out of her, thus trying to kill. After all, in this world, mana equals life. Gaspar responded by assuring her that he wasn't going to take it all away by killing her. He didn't understand the point of killing a small child. Besides, it would look terrible in the eyes of other people. Leia began to bombard the man with questions, after which he decided that it was worth getting rid of the girl after all. Leia could not even imagine that Daddy's face could make such a terrible expression. But the man changed his mind, assuring the child that she could be calm, because he thought he would still need her. The man told her that she has been in this body for 3 years now, and though under control, she can only keep it for a short time. But in addition to noticing his presence in it, unlike her brothers, Leia was also able to distinguish him from the Duke, even though he hid his presence. And on top of all that, the girl's small body contained quite a lot of mana. Leia responded by telling him that he could fuck off if he was going to bullshit about her being his child. The man explained that he hadn't figured out the reasons yet, but he was sure that her soul contained his mana. Suddenly, the girl realized that the deeds belonged to the Duke and his wife, which means she is not an illegitimate child. Leia wanted to know who he was in the end and why he was in his daddy's body. The man explained that he wasn't here because he wanted to be, after which he introduced himself with the name Lucas Willinen. Leia immediately began to replay the name in her head, for she had heard it often. Then she realized that she was Emperor Gregor's half-brother. Lucas explained that he was the one who was officially supposed to take the throne. However, he had been ambushed the day before he took the throne, and as a result, the cursed Gregor had cowardly put a curse on him. Upon opening his eyes, it was already easy in this body, regardless of his will. Leia began to think about killing all his brothers and ascending to the throne, somewhere similar to the classic course on how to become a tyrant. But still, the girl was concerned about where her daddy was now. Lucas explained that he was still inside him, and he couldn't stay in this body for that long, so he needed to return to his body as soon as possible. Leia was incredibly relieved that her daddy was okay, because she thought he would never come back. She was so much relieved now that she knew her daddy was safe. But she didn't know what to do about Lucas, because the mere thought of the Emperor makes him furious. The girl decided that if she tried her best, maybe he could be of some use to her. Leia turned to Lucas and asked if he wanted to get rid of the Emperor with her. The man was slightly taken aback by the question. Leia told Lucas that Emperor Gregor is now a tyrant, and one day he will become the father of the main character Inez and destroy Duke Hachania's family. Therefore, the enemy of her enemy is her friend. Plus, the girl recalled that Lucas had earlier said that she could be useful. Leia revealed that she is not an ordinary child, and besides, she knows what Lucas wants to know. So the girl explained that, first of all, by teaming up with her, he wouldn't lose anything. Lucas thought about it and realized that it was a win-win proposition. Since the Duke is from the Emperor's faction, and he being the former crown prince, he couldn't let anyone know about his existence. After all, it would only restrict his movement, but also no time at all to find a way to lift the curse due to the Duke's duties. After that, Lucas accepted the child's proposal, thus making her incredibly happy. Leia herself could not realize that it happened somehow too easily. The thought that Lucas had simply decided to accept because she was a child flashed through the girl's mind. So she decided that you can't just agree, because you have to cement it with something. So the girl drew her little pinky and asked Lucas if he could promise her. In response, the man agreed and held out his hand and made the exact same gesture. Leia clarified that the contract was valid until he returned to his body, and Hyrcania became an independent duchy. The words about the independence of the Duchy of Hyrcania slightly confused Lucas. After that, the man asked the child if she was really talking about the independence of the Duchy of Hyrcania now in front of the Emperor. Leia didn't deny her words and reminded him that it was too late to refuse anyway. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared beneath the girl and Lucas. What was the man's surprise when he realized it was a mage's contract? Lucas asked the girl how she knew about black magic. The man's response only amused Leia, after which she reminded him that she was no ordinary child. The magician's contract is the most commonly used magic in the original. Leia realized that Lucas expected her to make an alliance without guarantees. But now, if he betrayed her, all his mana would go to her. The next day, Leia looked at Lucas and didn't understand why he told himself she couldn't stay in his body for long. Leia resented the fact that Lucas was still in her daddy's body. One day, remembering her previous life, Leia suddenly asked Gaspar a question. The girl wanted to know if he loved Leia, to which Gaspar took his little hands and confessed to the girl that he loved her. He also clarified that he loved her more than anyone in this world. Leia realized that she had never tried to be the smartest child or become outstanding at anything. The girl realized that it was as if she didn't have to try hard to be loved. On a normal day during a Hyrcania meeting, one of the people present would first of all want to express his condolences to the duchy due to the information from the oracle. However, he felt that there was no need for the head of the family to make any harsh decisions. The man was an imperial palace manager named Ronald. The man notified that he wanted to take the duchess to the palace, to which Gaspar replied that he could do as he wished. Leia looked in Lucas's direction and reminded him that he should do things normally. Gaspar then took back what he had said and wondered who dared to make that decision. He then added that he wasn't going to send her to the imperial palace. Ronald explained that, according to the oracle, the princess is the daughter of His Highness Lucas, who is missing. But since the truth cannot be revealed without her father, it would be advisable that she be kept in the palace until His Highness's whereabouts are established. Ronald also added that, in addition, rumors had reached them that His Excellency the Duke was at odds with the young Duchess. Ronald assumed that Gaspar wanted to say, in other words, that the young Duchess had the blood of the imperial family flowing in her. Leia realized that they had all come knowing everything. But Gaspar decided to change Ronald's mind, saying that they have a good relationship. The man did not expect to hear that at all. After all, ever since Oracle had appeared, there had been rumors that his relationship with the young Duchess was terrible. Gaspar pounded the table, repeating that they had a good relationship. Ronald didn't know what to say. After all, Gaspar had evicted her to the annex himself, and now he was stalling. Suddenly, the girl noticed Lucas looking at her. Leia realized that he wanted her to pick up a good relationship. Leia walked over to her dad. She noticed that he continued to act cold. This made the girl angry, because he himself had told her to come over, and now he was acting like this. Leia realized that it was too obvious a lie this way, but decided that there was nothing she could do about it, and everything would have to play along on her own. Leia held out her arms for her daddy to hug her. But in response, the man simply took the girl by the scruff of her neck. Leia thought he was a real psycho, because she had asked for a hug, not to be picked up like a thing. But since she was a professional in such things, she immediately began to behave like a real little child. And then she kissed her daddy on the cheek. Lucas was so not expecting something like that to happen that he even broke the table, barely touching it. Leia thought that he really was a real psycho and had absolutely no intention of hiding his temper. Suddenly, one of the men turned to His Excellency the Duke and gushed about how reluctant he was to part with the young Duchess. He then remarked that they were a very cute couple. Leia rejoiced, convinced that today would be the day to get over it safely. Ronald was about to leave with everyone else, but turned to the Duke, informing him that he would be in touch with him later, and adding that they would send word. Ronald wished to see the Duke again as soon as possible, for he hoped to hear a different answer then. Leah was glad that all had gone well, and, judging from the fact that they had left in such a hurry, seemed to be much frightened of the Duke. But Lucas didn't say anything in response. Leah didn't realize if Lucas was like that because she gave him a little smack. After that, she turned to the man and asked him to come to his senses, because she actually didn't do it because she wanted to. Suddenly, the man called the girl Leah, and that's when she realized that it was Lucas in front of them now, and her real daddy. In that very second, the girl threw herself into her parents' arms. Leah couldn't believe at all that it was really her daddy in front of her. Gaspar apologized to his daughter Leah for not coming to his senses for a long time because she had a hard time. The man didn't understand how this was even possible. He didn't realize until the end that Lucas Welenin was in his body. The father turned to his daughter to inquire if the missing crown prince was not dead. Leah was quite surprised when she realized that her dad had found out that Lucas was in his body. Still, she decided to put those thoughts aside, because that wasn't the most important thing right now. The girl wanted to know if her daddy would really send her to the Imperial Palace, because she wasn't her daddy's daughter. Leah thought about how it seemed unfair after Lucas's explanation. Gaspar had assured his daughter that it was complete nonsense, and no matter who said what, she was his daughter, and he wouldn't send her anywhere. That said, Leah remembered that her dad had sent her to the annex. Gaspar had explained that he had done so to protect her from the Emperor. After all, unlike her brothers, Leah hadn't yet learned to defend herself on her own, so he figured she could hide in a separate building. Leah blushed, recognizing that was the whole reason. Suddenly, Dad pulled a letter from the temple out of his jacket, and also told her that it said who was an illegitimate imperial child, but Papa wasn't going to look at it, whereupon he tore the letter to shreds. Gaspar assured that Zachary, Sylvester, Enoch, and Leah were his precious children. Leah reflected on what she couldn't have in her past life. No matter how hard she tried, Leonora had gotten her entire existence too easily, simply for the reason that she was born the daughter of this man. The girl was worried that those from the palace would continue to insist on their own way. Then the Duke decided that he would rebel against His Majesty and die a dignified death. But Leah thought that this was not the way to go. Because of Daddy being like in the original novel, the family was exterminated. But in any case, the girl was unspeakably glad that her daddy came back. After that, she decided that she should see if there were any changes in the original. Leah turned to her daddy to notify that she would be going to the annex. But her father assured his daughter that she could go back to the main building right now. But Leah refused, for the book of the original novel is easier to hide there. The girl confessed that she wanted to be at a distance from her father. These words struck Gaspar like a thunderbolt. Mentally, Leah asked her daddy to just wait patiently until she found a way. At this time, in the annex of the Imperial Palace, little Inez was resentful because the Duke had said he wouldn't send Leonora to the Imperial Palace. But still, the girl was not surprised by such an act, for she had already encountered such a thing several times in the past. But still, she was not discouraged, because even for such actions of the Duke, she had a plan prepared. Leonora, reading this, was completely shocked that Inez had a plan to send her to the Imperial Palace. But the girl didn't understand why it didn't spell out her plan in detail. Leah resented the fact that, as always, the book cut off at the most important thing. Leah thought about the fact that if she used mana, she could see the content further. But judging by the fact that there was no reaction, there was no further content yet. Leonora was actually afraid to see something more shocking. After all, Inez had been reborn many times. Originally, there was no such thing, but somehow things had changed. Leah realized that the biggest change was her, and it most likely affected the world. At this time, the maids couldn't get enough of the young mistress looking at the blank pages of the book again. One of the main ones told the young mistress that her brothers were now out of the manor with the young Duke of Saloa. Another maid supported the conversation by saying that young Duke Tristan was about to enter the Imperial Academy with the young Dukes of Hakania. The name Tristan seemed very familiar to Leah. Leah remembered that Tristan de Saloa Gullum is the main male character in the novel. He was the leading figure in the downfall of the Hakania family, someone who was on good terms with Enoch and Sylvester. Leia thought about it for a moment and realized that he was quite the bastard. Gaspar, who had lost his temper over his daughter's death, had kidnapped Inez without harming her. Tristan, meanwhile, had joined the Emperor to ruthlessly exterminate the Hachania family. Leia realized that this novel is more violent than it seems, because the protagonist is a cunning vixen that tries to take away Leonora's Manu. The protagonist is a psychopath, destroys her family to vent his anger. As a result, Inez is the one who got the cure and survived. In addition, Zachary, who got her the elixir, is also from the Hachania family. The girl didn't know if it was worth discounting for that. Leia noticed that if you thought about it that way, everything was going against her. Leia worried if Lucas would be able to prevent the destruction of the family. The girl still couldn't figure out how to get the elixir. After all, she couldn't ask for the first brother she had never seen before. Suddenly, Leia turned to the maid Lala, informing her that she was going to go to her daddy's office now. On the way to her father's office, the girl pondered that the reason why Zachary, and not the protagonist Tristan, finds the legendary elixir called Panisha is simple. It is because Tristan, being the leader of the greatest knights of the Choklan Empire, was absent due to the civil war in the Duchy of Saloa. Zachary was the leader of the Halen, a military group that was just as powerful as Tristan's knights. It was not Zachary who was important here, but the knight commander of Halen who would replace Tristan. The girl pondered what if someone else became the knight commander instead of Zachary, who was in love with Inez. If that person was someone she liked. Leia was determined that elixir would be hers. Lala, who was walking beside the girl, was shocked to see the mistress laughing evilly again. Walking closer to her father's study, the girl bumped into Henry. The man immediately greeted the young duchess, after which he added that the duke had stepped out for a bit, but she could come in and wait inside if she wanted. Leia entered her father's study and suddenly came across a portrait of her mother. The girl noticed that the painting was already faded and realized that it would be worth tidying it up. Leia realized that if her mother Noelle was alive, all this would not be happening. The girl thought about the fact that the pirates of Saint-Tropez had killed Empress Inez, and even if the pirates had killed Empress Inez and the Emperor along with her, was there any reason for them to harm Noelle as well? The girl thought it would be much more profitable if they kept her captive. Suddenly, the girl was brought out of her musings by a large hand falling on her fragile shoulder. Leia was greatly startled and asked her father why he had frightened her. In response, her father wanted to know what his daughter was thinking about so much. Gaspar decided that she seemed to be bored without her brothers. Leia mentally decided that she would have to find out about her mom later, but for now she should focus on what she could do. Leia, overpowering herself, told her dad that she had come to ask him for something. The girl told him that she wanted to learn how to wield a ball like her brother Enoch. The man was slightly surprised when he heard that. Leia thought about the fact that if she wanted to make Enoch a knight commander, she should familiarize herself with his method of training. But the girl didn't understand why her daddy had that look on his face. Suddenly, the man said that Enoch was a petty parasite, as he seemed to be bragging to Leia again. The girl was in shock, not realizing when the conversation had taken such a turn. Gaspar remembered that last year Enoch had said he would show his little sister his power, and ended up almost hurting her when he used it. Leia realized that she had completely forgotten it was an incident where she almost lost all of her hair. Her father was angry, for he had warned his son that powers were not for show. Afterward, he decided that he needed to talk to Enoch immediately. Leia decided that there was nothing more to be done, and in order to get her dad's attention, she shouted with all her might for him to look at her. Leia wasn't going to show it so suddenly, but decided to try and use her mana. But in the end, it didn't work out for the girl. The father, on the contrary, thought that his daughter urgently needed to go to the bathroom, after which he grabbed her in his arms. The father assured his daughter that there was nothing to be embarrassed about because everyone goes to the bathroom. Leia didn't understand at all why her father didn't understand her. Suddenly, magic began to come out of her hands again. Leia noticed that her magic was the same color as Enoch's. The girl knew that Leonora was not born with the ability of soul knights, but her weak mana was somewhat similar to their mana, so she tried it. The girl hoped she could fool Gaspar. The father looked at his daughter and realized that she had the power of summer. Leia was glad that she had safely managed to convince her father, and, as planned, she was allowed to observe Enoch's training. Enoch introduced Leonora to his friend Tristan. Leia hadn't expected them to train together at all. The brother admired his little sister, but Tristan didn't share the same opinion with him, for he thought Leonora looked so bad, for all children looked alike. Leia had not at all expected to see the main male character of the original so soon. Enoch hugged his little sister and explained that their Leia was 100 times cuter than any other child. At this point, the girl was already out of breath in her brother's tight embrace. Tristan was curious about what Enoch's little sister was doing in training anyway. Enoch revealed that his sister Leia had developed the strength of a summer night. Tristan realized that this was rare, as only 2 summer nights had appeared in one generation of Hachania. Enoch found this amazing, for his sister might even become part of the Night Corps. But Tristan had little faith in that, for she was a girl. Leia became angry at the rude man's words. Enoch asked Tristan why he was now neglecting his little sister. A fight almost broke out between the boys. A man appeared out of nowhere and informed the boys that there was no sparring on the schedule today. Leia was outraged that Tristan had been the first to go to the conflict and was berating her brother. The man in question was Barristan, Enoch and Tristan's sword-wielding teacher. Tristan was glad that the sir had finally arrived. The man decided that since the little Duchess was here today, they should pay special attention to controlling their aura. The man's remark was especially made by Enoch. Leia, who was watching the whole scene, didn't understand what the special treatment was to Tristan. The girl was interested to see how well trained he was. Enoch and Tristan each took a ball. Leia sensed that the aura of the Night of Summer was different from Sylva's, and seeing it with her own eyes, she could see for herself the difference in their level. Barristan decided to ask Enoch to stop using the aura, but the boy tried to change the teacher's mind that he could do more. Barristan realized that Enoch and Tristan were originally on different levels, and so Enoch shouldn't try to keep up and just listen to what the teacher was saying. Enoch could do nothing but agree with the teacher. Leia watched her brother and realized that his position looked better. Tristan was very pleased with himself. Leia noticed that the red-haired man didn't even have a drop of sweat on his face. It really pissed her off. Tristan noticed that the girl's eye was fixed on him and decided to approach her to ask her why she was staring at him like that. Leia didn't know what to answer at all and mentally hoped for her brother's help. Suddenly, Tristan told the girl that he wouldn't let her get away with it just because she was small. Leia realized that this was the typical reaction of a protagonist with a broken personality, having grown up in harsh conditions, being under all sorts of restrictions from her stepmother and stepbrother. Leia decided to reply that she was watching Tristan because he was handsome. Tristan didn't expect to hear that at all, after which he asked what exactly was beautiful about him. Leia said that the young man's eyes were especially beautiful. The girl admitted that she was wrong and promised not to look at him so closely anymore. Tristan did not expect such a reaction, and then, though embarrassed, asked the girl not to apologize. Leia was amused by Tristan's reaction because he was acting like he was ready to hit her if she didn't apologize. On the way home, Leia sat on her brother's back and thought about the fact that he was tired from training, but he was still carrying her. The girl made sure that after all, the sense of guardianship and care for her younger sister was strongly developed in him. After that, she asked him if he wanted to become stronger, after which the boy admitted that he didn't at all. Leia wondered why. His brother explained because no matter how hard he tries, he can't become as strong as Tristan and his older brothers. Enoch is the third in the family, which means he may not go into the Night Corps. The boy decided that he would just live his life for his own pleasure. But here, Leia was not too happy with her brother's answer, for she had other hopes for him. Leia thought that if everything remained as it was, Enoch had no idea what kind of future awaited him. A few days later, Leia decided to visit the kitchen and went to the cook to see if everything was ready. Rumberti replied that everything was ready because it was a personal request of the young Duchess. The cook remembered that the young Duchess had asked for it last time and then asked what it was for. The girl said that it was a secret training, so no one should be told about it, and then asked the cook to keep it a secret. Rumberti swore to silence and thought about the fact that most likely the girl was probably carrying this food to some stray cat. The conclusion Leia came to after a few days of observations. As far as Barristan was concerned, his attitude during the training was unfair. After all, the constant comparison with Tristan makes Enoch lose motivation. Another big stumbling block is Enoch's attitude itself. Therefore, the girl decided that it was time for her to prove herself. After all, if her brother didn't have motivation, she just had to create it. In this, Leia was a professional. Enoch Hachanaya in the original work was born with a lazy temperament. Enoch appeared more often in episodes where he played with Leia. Thither liked her little brother playing with her, but now, curled up with memories, it was different. Leia realized that the best way to change the future would be if her brother Enoch became stronger and obtained the elixir, but if things stayed as they were, only death awaited her. However, the girl knew what made a person stronger. After that, Leia called out to a huge grizzly bear. Leia tapped the bear on the head and warned that they would play after practice. The girl also threatened Grizzly that if he did that again, she would get mad at him and punish him. Some time ago, Leia had accidentally found Grizzly, who had lost his mother in the Duke Forest. As a result of feeding and taming it daily, in hopes that it would help her long-term projections to strengthen Enoch, Leia told the bear to roll first to the right and then to the left. The animal obediently began to follow the commands, after which her mistress praised him. And since he did well, Leia offered Grizzly to try the fish marinated in honey. Leia, looking at the whole picture, doubted that it was that delicious. First of all, Leia realized that it was impossible to tame a grizzly strong enough and old enough to crush a rock with one hand. But it was possible with a tamer like Inez, who used mana to control animals. Leia used the recipe from the original, which Inez would later reveal. But she didn't even think she could tame it so quickly. Leia assumed she was just a genius. The girl was pleased that Grizzly's training had been a success. That meant that now it was Enoch's turn. Leia realized that this might be a bit cruel to her brother, after which she told Grizzly to follow her. The girl realized that this was an effective way, so she mentally asked for Enoch's understanding. At this time, Enoch was busy studying. Suddenly, the boy heard some sound and noticed his little sister at the window. Suddenly, the girl fell down, and Enoch rushed to his little sister. Just as suddenly, the boy noticed a bear sneaking towards his sister. Leia at this time reasoned that falling was not part of her plan, but noticed that Grizzly was wagering according to their training anyway. At this time, Enoch rushed to his sister's aid. The boy, as soon as he was near his sister, asked how she was feeling. At this time, Grizzly was already coming closer and closer. Then Enoch grabbed a stick and endowed it with his mana. The boy had no idea how the monster had gotten here in the first place. Suddenly, the mana enveloping the stick was gone. Leia, knowing this would happen, gave Grizzly the water attribute aura as a shield. The girl decided it would be enough to shake Enoch awake. Grizzly was getting closer and closer. Enoch, seeing this, asked Leonora to get up as soon as possible. Leia realized that her bear thought that she was asking him to the opposite of coming up. The girl became worried, for this was no longer according to her plan. Leia noticed that her little brother was really scared, but despite the tears in his eyes, Enoch asked his little sister not to be afraid, because her brother was always there for her. So he assured her that everything would be all right. Leia realized that her brother was saying this even though he was actually the most afraid here. Leia began to ponder how to get out of this situation. After all, if Grizzly came closer and started to beg like a dog, the plan would fail.